So
Okay, so
people are
let's
not going to
see.
even see you.
See, I'm short, so it's okay.
Yeah, no, no, this is good. This is good. All right. Before I butcher your last name, is it Kaufman?
Kaufman.
Kaufman. See, I was like, it's either or. It's either
Well,
or.
if I was in Germany, it'd be Kaufmann, but that's okay. We're good. You know what? At this stage of my life, I almost answer to "Hey you."
Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session with your host, Michael Rearden.
All right, Monica Kaufman, welcome to Coaching in Session. We are going to be having a real conversation today about finances. We're going to be getting into your work momentarily, and we're just going to be understanding the mindset of what money is and what wealth is, because our world today, it seems like you have either one or both problems. You have an income problem or you have a spending problem. And I know people who have a large income, they're making millions of dollars a year, they have no money left. And it could be a spending problem. It could be a management problem. There's so many different things that can happen, not only to our finances, but to our mindset when things happen. So an unforeseen circumstance, a hospital bill, something happens. For example, my dog, she's old and she has to go for all these surgeries. Thank God I have pet insurance. But if I didn't, that'll be like $10,000 every single time she had to go in. And not everyone has that. Not everyone is able to, put up that type of money. People are living paycheck to paycheck. We are in the rat race essentially. How do we get out? But before we do that, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and how do you help?
My name is Monica Kaufman. I'm a CFP. I'm Director of Financial Planning of an RIA. And when I joined the RIA 4 years ago, an RIA is a fiduciary fee-for-service boutique financial management firm. And we are small by design, but we are growing. And I joined with the intent of actually addressing this problem. We are, according to the industry, 4 to 5 generations in to a place where 80% of us are considered financially illiterate. We don't understand the financial system in which we operate, which is awful. Okay. And it's a real challenge. The industry is not compensated or encouraged to actually address the underlying problems. You meet with a qualified financial advisor when you already have money to invest. So how do you get to the point where you transition money into wealth? Because they're not the same thing. So I came in with the express intent and purpose of actually developing and implementing a program to address that. But in a nutshell, money is something that you earn. Wealth is something that pays you. Wealth is something that it can pay you one of two ways. It can be a combination, but it's either that it's going to pay you income on a regular basis, or it's going to increase in value so that when you sell it, you make more than what you put into it. But that's what wealth is. And the goal is to take the income we have and the resources we have and to transition, move it, give it a job so that it can pay us or grow in value.
Well, I think the first question I need to ask you is how can people get more money so they can get their way to wealth?
Okay, so that's the challenge because right now with our cost of living crisis, I'll use the British term, we have a cost of living crisis. Things are so expensive that it's incredible. When I look at how much I've spent, whether it's insurance, house insurance, health insurance, car insurance, okay, across the board, it has gone up dramatically. If you take a look at the fact that, for example, cars, I bought one car in 2020, a month after the shutdown started, and I then had to go back and replace it and wound up getting essentially the same car, and it was about $16,000 more on the sticker, okay, for the same make and model just 3 years later. So that is a very real phenomenon. Inflation is where the cost of something increases. But what people don't understand is that that compounds. So if it's 5% one year and then 8% another, that 8% is calculated off of that new price, not the original price. And so one of the things that drives me crazy, and one of the rules I have, and we'll do this in this conversation and any conversation I have, is that I hate jargon. And so I'll explain a term, but we use real language. I want to be able to convey to you what I want you to hear and understand so that you can use it, but it has to be in real language and real terms. I hate jargon. I don't want to hide behind that. And I encourage everybody out there, whenever you talk to a financial pro, whenever you listen to a reporter or discussion, make sure they're using real language. Make sure that you understand every piece of it. There's nothing here you can't learn and you can't master. So let's start off with that. So we need to deal with the inflation issue and we need to deal with the income issue. But the other piece is not just a spending issue, it's a debt issue and it's a restructuring issue. And it really starts with the mind. You cannot go anywhere that your mind hasn't gone before you. So we have to start with, what are the messages we had before? What's stopping us? Is it a fear? Is it a learned pattern? Is it a pattern that you saw people from your childhood engage in? Okay. What are the patterns that are there that no longer serve you? And then how do we come up with a realistic construct to shift those patterns so we can shift how you think, then shift how you feel, and shift how you act? Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I do want to look at the patterns because patterns are very interesting, especially when they develop at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
It happens almost with us not even knowing that they're
Exactly.
forming.
That's why we're 4 to 5 generations into this problem.
And I could just look at my son, for example, and the things he does, just like he mimics me so well. And I'm like, you're just like a spitting image of me. He doesn't look like me, but like he's a little bit, he's my son, but like he doesn't look like a mirror of me, if you know what I'm saying. But he does all of these little things. And I'm like, I would do that. I would do that. I would do that. And then I also am telling myself, if I'm doing something bad, he will also do that.
Exactly.
So it's important for me to make sure that I'm equipped. If I don't know something, I need to figure out so he can figure it out. Because if I'm over here just saying, well, you know, this was my circumstance, and many people live in their circumstances. They say, well, my mom did this, my dad did this, and then they just kind of make that their identity. How can we shift that?
Okay, so there's two things. One, I remember, and this was when I started this whole process, back in about 2010, I had the opportunity to go into my kids' school and do an economics and financial reality class for the middle schoolers. And it was a ball. I had more fun doing this. But I remember two things happened. The first class that we had, at one point, I took this huge monster whiteboard covering the entire wall. And I turned to the kids, about 40 of them in the room, maybe 50, and said, tell me what you want in your lives. The guys shouted out a whole bunch of things, pretty normal, what you would expect. The girls shouted out, and I hate to sound stereotypical, they could describe for me the jewelry, the clothing, the airplanes, the sailboats, the houses, all of it. Great. Stopped and turned to the kids and said, how are you going to pay for it? Dead silence in the room. One young lady turned and said, after about 45 seconds, I'm going to marry someone and he's going to buy it for me. The cute little boy sitting next to her turned to her without missing a beat, shifted his whole body, shifted the desks, shifted the chair, and said, good luck with that. And after that, we got into a dialogue with some of the kids. And one young lady turned to me and said, I want to be a marine biologist. Great. Tell me about what a marine biologist does. She couldn't do it. All she could tell me was there was a program at UC San Diego that she wanted to go to, and it would take her 6 years to get to the point where she could get a job as a marine biologist. They said, who hires marine biologists? She couldn't tell me. Do you know how much you can earn as a marine biologist, starting and going on later into the whole process? Couldn't do it. So she then told me that it would cost, at UC San Diego at that time, it was about $50,000, maybe $55,000 out of state tuition. I said, okay, so you're going to spend over $300,000 a year in tuition, and not counting some of your expenses, not counting the opportunity, the lost opportunity to work during those years, not counting any of that. You're going to spend at least $300,000 in tuition, room, and board to get a degree where you don't know what you're going to do with the degree, who will hire the degree, what you can earn from the degree, but you're going to spend it because you want to be a marine, or who will hire you to have this degree. She couldn't do it. Nobody in her family had ever spoken to her like. A couple weeks later, I'm back in the room, and I had a whole lesson plan, and all of a sudden it stopped, and I saw that several of the girls had some sort of, I think it was a Frappuccino, brand new. It was an ice drink from Starbucks, and I said, all right, ladies, did you work to pay for the money to buy that drink? Not one of them had. I knew there were some women in there, some girls who had jobs. None of those girls were the ones with the fraps. So I said, how much did those drinks cost? I think it was around $4 at the time. And they said, $4. I said, tell me how much money whoever gave you that money had to earn to give you $4 to buy that drink. They said, $4. I said, no, there's federal taxes. There's state taxes in Arizona, because that's where we lived at the time. There are income taxes. Okay. There's employment taxes. So they had no idea. I said, that drink is a want. It's not a need. So what did they have to pay for that was a want, that was a need, before they had the $4 to give you to buy the drink? No one had had the conversation. And I was a little worried about the blowback from the parents. What were they going to say? And it was universally positive. So many of the parents were grateful that they brought me into that room to have that conversation, because they didn't have the confidence or the language skills to try to actually put it together in a way that made sense for those kids. And when it went to things that were even more complicated, they didn't know. And so it was one of those opportunities for me to provide a service, and the parents were grateful, because the truth is you can't pour from an empty cup. In my own personal life, my mother grew up with nothing, worked her way through college back in an era where that wasn't so usual, did math back in the 50s where she wasn't invited into the room for a TA to help her learn on top of the coursework. And yet she managed to get the top score on that placement exam to stay as a math major in the 50s. And she came from the wrong side of the track. She had a really rough time staying at school financially. She pulled it off. She did it. But she got in and she had to fight for her place there. She broke the mold. When my parents got divorced and my father left, my mother really had to step back, and she had to learn some skills that she'd not been raised with. And it was very scary for her. So I understand breaking out of the mold is really hard, and you don't often know where to go, but there's no reason for shame. It's nobody's fault at this point. The question is, we're 4 to 5 generations in. You're not unusual to be in this position. The question is, where do you find the information you need? And then where do you get the support you need to live the changes you're going to live?
Mhm.
So I really want to take the shame out of this. There is no cause for it. There's no reason for anyone to hesitate. It's just a fact of life. 80% of us are in this place. You're not alone.
I think what happens is it's easier to stay where you are than to change.
Yeah, it is. It's very scary. It's very, very scary. And so my question to you is, what do you want? What would make your life better right now if we addressed it? What can we do right now to make some changes? Where would you get the biggest impact in your life in a positive way if we were to address it right now? And let's take it one step at a time.
Yeah. I can see many people, if they had to answer that question, they would have to get real. I don't mean to use the same word 2 times in a row, but they have to get real on their everything, because most people are living above their means. They are just, extending themselves too much. And maybe at one point they were able to do it, just barely manage. But as you said, with all the costs of inflation, things going up, taxes, now that thing that you were barely able to sustain is almost now becoming unsustainable. And so
Exactly.
you can play that game and saying, okay, well, let's see how long I can hold on, or let me play this hope game or this wishing game that things will change. But the thing about wishing and hoping is that there is no action there. We need action in order to get to the things that we want. If you want to have a business, you have to work on that business. You can't just say, I'm going to start a business and everyone's going to come to me. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. You have to put in the work. You have to put in the groundwork. You have to put in the effort. And you have to learn what you don't know. And here we are. We have many, as you said, 80% of people today are financially illiterate. And in our schools today, they don't teach finances. They don't teach financial literacy.
I
And I
agree.
remember in high school, I did one accounting class, and this was a private high school, one accounting class, and that was it. Unfortunately, that led to some things that helped me out, later in life. But most of those students in there, they were kind of just passive. They're like, I'm just doing this to get credit so I can graduate and not have to worry about it. But I was actually really into it. I remember there was a CPA that that came in, and he was talking about how much he made and what he does. And it was new for most of the people there, because we come from not much in that neighborhood that we were in. So our parents, they worked really hard to put us in those private schools, because the public schools weren't the good choice at the time.
Right.
So now we have parents who are sending their kids to school, and they're hoping their kids get an education, but they're lacking the fundamentals in what it truly means to be an adult. Because most children, by the time they're 18, or maybe if you want to fast forward it, 21, maybe they left college, they don't know what they want to do. Most of these children that are or young adults that are graduating from college will not even use their degree. So did they spend 4 years of their life going down a path that they thought would be a good thing, right? Similar to the story of the girl, and she wanted to be a marine biologist. Who told her that, right? Was it just something that was a passion? Was it an inkling? Or was it something that, like she was meant to do for the rest of her life? Time will tell, but you do have to get real clear on what you want your future to be.
Exactly. Okay. And so one of the things, I had a realization the other day. I was at my hairstylist studio, and I have known Adam for 7 years. And when I first met him, he was young and pretty vibrant, scrappy, and extraordinarily talented and dedicated to his craft. And 7 years later, he was no longer an employee stylist. He had moved up. He had his own studio. All right. And he had a list of life goals that he achieved in 7 years. He got married. He bought his own house. He built out his own studio. He had a list of things, and he had achieved every single one of them. And I looked at him and I said, is there a goal that you had 7 years ago when we first met that you haven't achieved yet? He said, no. I said, okay, what are the new goals? He said, I'll tell you soon. Didn't tell me then. And I said, okay. I said, that's amazing. You achieved every one of them. And he looked me straight in the eyes and said, what's the point of having a goal if you don't achieve it? And the difference between a hope and a goal is that you have two things. One, you have a willingness to sacrifice to get there. There is always a cost. The fact that you and I are here together having this conversation right now means we're not somewhere else doing something else. You sacrificed to build your podcast. You have made consistent effort and gifts of your time and your resources to build this out. You gave up other things to get here. Okay. So you made your goal, your wish of building a podcast, your desire, from a wish into a goal by actually putting in the action on a consistent basis and putting in the sacrifices along the way. Same thing with Adam, my stylist. He was willing to give up time. He was willing to spend extra money on extra training, competitions, certifications that he didn't need to get. Why? He was mastering his craft. He spent extra time and sacrifices in marketing his business to get to the point where he is as successful as he is today. He had a plan. He had a willingness and a drive. He was willing to learn and learn and learn. And if there was a mistake, he said, oops, that was a mistake. Shifting. And he shifted. And he did it. Okay. Most people will face New Year's Day with a list of wishes and absolutely no plan to make those real. So one of the things I'd love to do, and I think I'm going to do, if anybody wants to follow me, is I'm going to do a goal setting workshop for free. You can come on and we're going to walk through goal setting, but we're going to do it from a psychological perspective. And it's adversity quotient. What is it in your life, if you look at all the different categories, if you were to correct for one thing in your life, and the most important thing, or the one thing in your life that if you were to work on it and fix it, would dramatically improve your life? Okay, if it's that one area, what are the different steps involved? Let's work backwards. You want to get to X point, you're at X, you want to get to Y. Where do we need to go? Look X right in the eyes, face it, name it. I'm right there. If it's debt, I'm $100,000 in debt, whatever the number is. Okay, I want to be at X number by the end of the year. Working backwards, what do I need to do to get there? Break it into quarterly goals, break those goals into monthly goals, monthly pieces and chunks, break it into weekly chunks, and then literally put that into your calendar and your schedule and do it. And put accountability in at the end of each week and at the end of each month. And you have to recommit to it. And then you say, okay, so I've got that one goal. And then I'm going to say, maybe I'm going to take on a couple of other pieces. I'm not going to have the ability to commit to those goals with the same intensity. Maybe I need to build up my emergency fund. All right. You can't just pay down debt and neglect the emergency fund, because if something else happens, if the cat gets sick again, if the dog has a problem, if you need new tires, the last thing you want to do while you're paying down debt is acquire new debt. You've got to build up that emergency fund. You have to walk on two legs. Okay. That financial foundation is built on paying down the debt and building up the emergency fund at the same time. You may not be able to do it in the same ratios, but you do have to make an effort. So let's do it. So you'll make that commitment. You'll schedule that in, and you'll hold yourself accountable to it. You have to be realistic. You do have to be smart, specific, realistic, measurable, but you also have to really confront the real problems. Go after the areas where there's the maximum impact, and literally make that commitment and sacrifice to get to those goals. Now, you also have to be realistic and say, okay, if it's all sacrifice that I never ever go out to eat again with my friends, that's not a realistic thing, okay? But maybe instead of going out to the bars and going out to eat, maybe get your friends together and say, okay, 1 week we'll be at your house and 1 week we'll be at my house, and I'll bring a bottle of wine and you'll bring this. Okay. And so you won't spend the same amount of money with the bar tab, but you will hang out with your friends. There are other ways to do this. One of the things that we know about people who are financially successful is that they are committed to their friends. They are committed to their communities. They are involved, but they don't have to choose the most expensive ways to do it. I can have a better time hanging out with my friends at home or at their homes and bring a bottle of wine, bring a dinner, bring a salad, bring something. And it's a better time than me going to a restaurant all the time. I don't need to do that. Restaurants are great, don't get me wrong. But, okay, one of the things I'll do with several of my friends is we'll go out for lunch. Why? I don't eat as much. It's a less expensive entree. And for me, I feel better if I eat a larger lunch than dinner. So it works. And it's a little bit more respectful. We're less likely to drink during lunch. I don't drink that much, okay? But it's one of those things where it's just a little bit easier, okay? You can do things where you still have that impact and you spend time with the people who matter to you, and you can cut the expenses. You can be strategic. The ultimate goal is to understand that money is nothing more than a set of tools in your hands. What am I going to use those tools to build? So if I want to spend time with people and I want to go do things, I can be strategic about how I spend those.
That's a very good way to put it. Money is a tool, and yet money for many people is a means to an end. When I get enough money, I can retire. When I get enough money, I can be happy. But we are just in this habitual loop of chasing something, right? And not realizing we can be happy today. We can work on change today. Many people, they live in the future. So I'm living at this point in my life where things are better, right? But then it's almost debilitating because they say, I don't even know where to begin. Like I have my student loans still. Maybe they have heavy credit card debt. Maybe their mortgage, and they had to. What do you do with the thing like if you get a remortgage on your home, so you get so you get a second mortgage, and so people are literally, in lack for better words, digging themselves in a deeper hole. So they should be digging themselves out, but it seems like they keep digging themselves down.
So here's the question that I have, and there are times when you have to make shifts, okay? And I get that, and I understand that. And there are some shifts I want to make over the next couple of years. However, okay, let's take it one step at a time and think, first of all, when it comes to debt, the easiest way to do this is to look at your debt, list it out. How much, to whom do I owe? How much do I owe? What's my interest payment? And what's my minimum payment? And the interest payment is the piece I want people to look at. Always and forever. Why? Because that interest payment reflects risk. So we want to get rid of the higher risk debt first. We want to get rid of that stuff. And that's where I want you to look. I want you to look at that and say, okay, that's the first piece that needs to go. Why? So you literally look and say, okay, this is how much money I have to use to get rid of the debt. I'll pay here's the minimum payments. And when I meet the minimum payments, I'm going to throw the extra money that I have into paying off that highest interest payment debt first. And that's the way you, A, get out of debt the fastest. B, you pay the least amount of money in interest to somebody else, so you're making somebody else richer. But it's also a real focus on, I want people to focus on risk, on that risk communicator, because that's going to matter on investments. It also matters on debt. Where do you want to wait to spend your money? What risk are you willing to carry? That's the whole piece of this. Risk is inevitable. Okay. So the question is, we can avoid it. That doesn't really work. We can transfer it to somebody else. That's a problem too in terms of debt, but we can transfer risk to others. Like insurance, you transfer the risk, the financial risks of driving a car to the insurance company for a fee. Okay. And they're making a bet based on your track record as to how likely it is that you're going to cost them money. And that's the premium they make you pay. You can transfer it. You can mitigate for it. So you can lower your expenditures. You can lower your credit, your debt. You can increase your emergency fund and cash on hand and see your credit score go up. So by mitigating, you wind up lowering the amount of interest you have to pay to somebody else or the cost of borrowing. Or you can just outright avoid it. And that just doesn't work. Or you can take it on yourself. You can say, I'm willing to take on any and all debt regardless. And that is not something that I would recommend that people do under normal circumstances. I mean, there's very few reasons why I would see somebody doing that. But again, I want people to think about the tools. So I want people to think about risk. If I never hear another person say, I want a risk-free portfolio, I'm going to be a much happier kipper, because there's always risk. There's always risk of inflation. There's always risk of all these other pieces. So we're going to manage the risk and find out how much risk you're comfortable with and what risks you are willing to accept and not willing to accept. And that will inform how we make choices. Okay. There's no reason for anybody to not understand these tools and to not master them. I've seen regular people master them and get to a point where they have millions. I've seen people in their early fees come in and say, okay, I'm in trouble. I'm negative, but I need to build this out. I've educated my kids. I've acquired debt. I've got this. I've got that. I saw in one particular case, the husband was working. The wife got a job. Everything she earned got put into building assets. The husband paid down debt. And 14, 16 years later, roughly, they actually had enough, about $2 million, house paid off, everything else paid off, condo someplace else. And they were ready and willing and able to retire. Course corrections can happen. You have to wrap your mind around the ability to do it, believe you can do it, and work to figure it out. You are going to fall down. You're going to make mistakes, fine, but you're going to pick yourself up and you're going to learn from those mistakes and you're going to move on.
I do want to get into the conversation of risk tolerance in age. When I was young, I met with a financial advisor. I was like 18, 19. Mm-hmm. And basically, one of the things he said, he was like, I wish I started investing when I was 18. And one of the things he said that helped me understand risk a little bit better is like, you're 18. You have the rest of your life ahead. If you lost all your money today, it's nothing. But if that person's who's 65, 70 is getting ready to retire, they can't lose everything, right? They don't have the time anymore. So I wanted to get your take on risk tolerance and age.
So there's lots of different tools that we can use for that. And one of the things as a CFP, I have to tell people all the time is, unless you tell me there's a specific reason, when I'm looking at projecting out your needs for the rest of your life, I'm looking at between age 95 and 99. I have to plan for you to have a very long life. And we're going to look at different things. We're going to look at really, where are your risks? Is it the risk of needing nursing home care, memory care? Is it the risk of, some people that I know of have families where the families are like, no, we're going to bring them in. We're going to take care of them. And some people are like, no, we're going to put them in assisted living. My grandmother, God bless her, she realized she wasn't in a good place. and she wasn't going to be able to take care of herself, sold her car, activated her application at the nursing home. And after that was done and she was on the waiting list and they said it would be about 11 months, she called up my mother and my uncle and said, by the way, this is what I did. Okay. They were very upset, but she said, no, I'm not going to be able to do this and I'm not going to be a burden on my family. All right. So you have to look at everybody's circumstance. It's not an absolute. As people approach retirement, we have to look at one, what are the chances that they're going to need long-term care? And statistically, most of us are going to need it. And that's an issue. And so the question is, how do we want to plan for that? And then we want to look at another thing that I will look at aggressively is how much do they have in cash on hand on an emergency fund? And for one of the lessons I learned from 2008 is that when you have a big market correction, having cash on hand and having the debt controlled, paid down, or paid off becomes very, very valuable because you're putting less stress on the investments. So if somebody is facing retirement, and let's say they're in their mid-60s and they have Roth accounts, which when they're older, if they're in their 70s and they have Roth accounts, the Roth accounts don't have required minimum distributions. Roth IRAs do not. Roth 401ks do. That's part of the reason why you want to move it from the 401k, the Roth 401k, into the Roth IRA. Having said that, I will look at that. I will also look at cash on hand. Why? Because if we have cash on hand, then we're not cashing out investments that are at a low level. So that becomes very advantageous because we can allow the investments to recover over time. So it's about that whole financial picture. And the most important thing that I want people to think about with risk tolerance is where is the risk and why is there a shift in tolerance? So again, it's never etched in stone. One of the reasons why you'll hear financial advisors and financial planners, whenever we talk to somebody, the first thing we're going to say is, tell us what's going on. How are you doing? What's happening? And that's not just because I want to know how people are doing. And I do care about and like my people. It's because I really am looking for clues that maybe we need to take some risk off the table because their personal situation has changed. It's a dynamic relationship. You can't just set it and forget it and walk away.
One of the questions I want to ask, because I'm sure people are going to be getting to this point now, is there's so many financial professionals out there. How can someone know or determine which one is for them? Is it a CFP? Is it a CPA? Do they need a tax attorney? I mean, we can go down a list of all the people who are going to help us with our money, but how do we know who's the right fit for for us or for the people?
So one of the things that I work on in my program that's on the educational side is making yourself a better client and being in a position to demand better and work with people in a better, more effective way. Understanding that you are the CEO of your personal enterprise and these people have the privilege to sit in your board and work with you. But in order to do that, you have to understand the system. You have to understand yourself and those expectations and figure out who and what you need. So people look for an easy shortcut, get the designations. I've seen fabulous people at different firms, and I've seen people with the designation and I've seen people without the designations. Really what it boils down to, there are certain things that I want to see. If somebody's a financial advisor, they need to be a financial advisor. They need to have certain designations and they have to have for at least the Series 66 or the Series 65, which gives them the authority to sell fee for advice. Most importantly, the more you understand, the better, the more you'll be able to discern who is worth it and who is not. And the better your instincts will become. So when you work with me in my program, and this is just educational, okay, this is not on the advisory side, we work on the structure. So it's gratitude, resilience, instincts, and tenacity. And the instinct piece comes from not just learning, but taking the time over time to process through the reasoning and to get to a point where you can trust your own judgment on what you're looking at and what people are saying. If I gave you the shortcut, it would be, can someone explain to you in real words what something is, why it belongs, why you should own it, why it fits into and how it fits into your overall picture? They have to be able to explain it to you in a way that is free of jargon, that makes sense to you. And the only way it's going to make sense to you is if you learn enough about it to be able to say, you know what? That makes sense. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with any financial advisor. I want you to understand what we're saying and to have the confidence to say, wait a second, can you go back over it? I'm not getting that. Okay. Again, I want to shift the power back onto the hands of the client. I want to shift the power back onto the hands of the individual making the decision. And I want you guys to demand better from anybody who's in this industry. You have the right to demand better. The only way you're going to be able to do that is to learn more about the system as a whole. So I want to be able to have people learn how to work with the CPA, not to drive the CPA crazy, but also to make sure that their needs are met and to understand when it's a good relationship or how to improve the relationship. I want people to understand, and there's a shortage of CPAs. There really is a shortage of CPAs. If you have to work with a tax attorney, I want you to understand enough to be able to work with a tax attorney. If you're going to work with a financial advisor, under what circumstances? What are you looking for? What do you believe you need right now? Some people want to manage their investments. Some people want someone to manage it for them. Do you want a fiduciary? Do you not? I will tell you that I prefer the fiduciary model because it forces me and everybody else like me to put the client first. I have to put you first.
I'm a fan of the fiduciary model also. I'm not sure if you know the podcast. It's called like Stacking Benjamins.
No.
Or something like that. And they also have professionals come on talking about money. You should definitely look into that. It's going to be very valuable for you. And I'm sure the guys will love to have you on. They talk about all the different type of money lingos and all the things happening with your money and professionals. And it was a great podcast. I listened to it in 2017. I started listening to it. And I mean, they have so many episodes out right now, but like you can just start off wherever they are. And they always bring on guests similar to what I do here at Coaching in Session. There's always going to be a new guest coming with some new knowledge, with with a new way that you can learn and grow. It's not so much of I need to start on episode 1, otherwise I'm going to miss out on all of the wonderful things, and I'm not going to have the the knowledge that is necessary for me to understand what I'm learning today or the newer episodes. It's always going to be a learning game, right? You have to be that forever learner, because it's easy for us to say, you know what? I graduated, I should know everything. And then we kind of go through life and we are so susceptible to making all these silly mistakes when we can just ask for help. And I love the idea of coaches. I love the idea of mentors. I love the idea of people who have done it, who have practiced it, who live it. And that is what we need. We need to get out of this mindset of I'm doing everything by myself, because yes, you can do so much by yourself, but you only have 24 hours in a day. And also you need someone to look at your blind spots, because we all have them. And if you can't find someone that you can trust, and that's why I like the fiduciary model, because they do it in the best interest of the client. It's not so much of I'm doing it per it's like a service fee. So every time I do something, if I create if I put you in this index fund or mutual fund or whatever, I'm getting some money, versus it's like I'm trying to figure out what is best for you. And I think that is where we need to be right now. What is best for you? And it's going to be different for everyone. And I always encourage people, you have to do the work. You just can't say, okay, I'm just going to give all my money to the CPA and all this, tax attorney stuff. And I don't know if you know, like, it was a Fat Joe. He's a rapper. Pitbull also. He had trouble with these CPAs and tax attorneys, and they weren't paying the taxes on the money. So yeah, and it's so crazy, because these people were so busy, of course, right? So they delegated it, but then those people that they relied on to pay the money to the IRS, to the government, they didn't do it. So they had all this back tax money that they owed, and they had to go through the process. Eventually, they found good CPAs, they found good tax attorneys, and this is why I'm stressing: do the work. Anyone can say that they're gonna, make your life easy and they can make it all look pretty, but do the work to figure out if it's good, right? Check the track record. Maybe try them out for a month, see how it is, right? Go for the consultations, they're free. Figure out if it's a good fit for you. And, don't just say, well, my friend John down the road uses them, but what do you need? Because John is different than you. And so your circumstance might be different than John. So figure out who do you want in your corner.
Here's the thing. It's funny. You mentioned that with the rappers, and what my mind flashed back to was an episode with Oprah Winfrey in the 90s. And she had a singer who had not just done Broadway, but was a pop singer who had to go through bankruptcy. And she had trusted people to manage her money, and she wasn't watching over it. And Oprah looked at her and said, "It is your money. It is your future. You have to be in complete control of what goes on with your money and your future. You never sign over that responsibility to anybody else." And that stuck with me long before I went into the industry. Okay. And I think about her in so many levels. She's a role model in how she built her business and how she took radical responsibility and ownership of her life. And she is one of my personal role models because of that. I will encourage people to take ownership. No one cares or should care about your financial future more than you do. And the way I look at it is, look, we were all created to be free. And that manifests, we are created spiritually to be free by our creator. And that shows up and goes down into being responsible for our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, our intellectual well-being, and honing and developing our minds and never letting that go. You own what you think. You have the right to figure out what you think on any given subject. Okay. And then the other piece is your financial tools. Your money is really just the set of tools you use to take care of yourself and the people and things you care about. Don't apologize for taking ownership of that. Absolutely take radical responsibility for that and being financially free is it's way more than just earning money. It's everything that goes on beyond the money. And that money is there to provide for yourself and your future. It's there to secure today and to provide for tomorrow. Don't apologize for taking ownership over that.
I think that's a great segue. Tell the audience where they can find you, social medias, website, all the good stuff. And then please, before or after you do that, give us some final words.
Okay, so you can find me. The best way to find me right now would be at www.harmonyam.com or at www.harmonywealthacademy.com. My email is mkaufman@harmonyam.com. Please feel free to email me at any time. And I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, the things that keep you up at night. What is it that if I could help you resolve would make an immediate impact on your life now? I want to hear that and I want to focus on that. I think the big thing for people to understand to build confidence is that if they tackle one problem after another, they'll understand they can hit all of that. So, and then final words, I really do believe that there is nothing here you can't do. I have had referrals and seen regular people make the decision to pursue wealth by being proactive, and literally couples where one couple salary is used to pay for the bills and the other one's invested. I've seen people make the course correction and get there. It is doable. You have to make the decision to go there, to get comfortable with being the discomfort of going out of your standard box, and accept the fact that if you don't care where you're going and you don't make the decision to really care and sacrifice to get there, any road will get you there. You will not like that end destination. You can do this. I know you can. And if you reach out, if you decide to work with me on the Wealth Academy, it's not going to be advisory. We're not going to pitch anything. We want you to take time away from being pitched product and really learn what it is out there, get the tools on so that you feel comfortable making decisions. And then once you're done with the program, you can then go out and do what you need to do. So take the time, take a break from listening to sales pitches. There is no magic panacea, but the power to make the changes within your hands and within your mind.
I always say we have to be forever learners. And I don't know if I said it today in the episode, but I'm saying it again if I did. You have to be forever learners. And there's not a point when you say, you know what, I learned enough, right? I'm at a good place, right? There's always something new to learn. Think of AI, for example. AI wasn't around 10, 15 years ago as it is today. But yet there's so many people who are learning and leaning into AI because they understand that it's going to be prevalent, and you must understand this. Think of self-driving cars, Teslas, things like that. People didn't think that, in the 1950s, they would say, I have my Ford and, I have my Cadillac and this is what I have. And now we have all of these different options, right? We learn different cars and how we drive these different cars too, right? And I have a prediction for future generations. I know we talked a little bit about generations earlier on, is that they're not going to know how to drive if the computers ever went down, because they won't have the rear backup camera or anything. They won't know how to parallel park. We have a bunch of problems coming. And what we can do today is we can learn what we need to do for not only being successful today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, but for a lifetime. And for each generation that's going to be subsequent to us. It doesn't end with us saying, okay, well, I did it, right? We have to make sure that everyone else who follows is on the same track, because when you win and everyone else wins, the world wins. And people just think that if I win, then I'm happy and I'm good. But try to win by yourself. It doesn't feel good, right? You have to win together.
Build your team. And I love your message, but what I want people to do is build the team intentionally. Choose people who believe, who want the best in you and for whom you want the best, who believe you can achieve the best, that you are capable of so much more, and who are going to encourage you and hold you accountable for becoming so much more.
Yeah,
okay?
I always say, surround yourself with people who want to see you win as bad as you want to win.
I love that phrase, and I'm going to borrow it.
Yeah, take it, put it on a t-shirt.
Can I give you credit? Can I quote you down below?
Yeah, you could quote it down below, make some money, and then use that money to reinvest in your business, get some, so we can tell more people about what you do, because I think the work that you're doing is amazing and we need to get that out there more. So I do want to thank you, Monica, for coming on, spending some time talking about your work and just, being that beacon for many people in these dark times that might be trying to figure out what is their next step. I believe that you can be that step for them.
This was a pleasure. I love your people. I love you.
You're a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate that.